The decree came without warning. One moment, the Sol system hummed with the quiet rhythm of human life ships ferrying goods between Earth and Mars. Children laughing in orbital academies, farmers tending vertical gardens under artificial suns. The next, silence. It began with the stars vanishing. Not literally, of course. But every ship beyond the moon lost contact. Every FTL beacon winked out. Every comms channel filled with static that felt less like noise and more like a wall. Then the message arrived, not through official channels, but broadcast on every screen, every speaker, every implant, in every language ever spoken by humankind, by order of the Galactic Concordance and confirmed by the Lords of Order. The planetary system of Sol, home to the species Homo sapiens, is hereby declared a zone of unstable contamination. All diplomatic, economic, and communicative ties are severed effective immediately. The veil is enacted. Return is forbidden. Influence is prohibited. Existence within the veil is your final sentence. No trial. No debate. No chance to speak. The Lord's three ancient beings no one had ever seen, only heard had judged humanity and found them unworthy. The reason? A skirmish near Vexus Prime, a neutral trade hub at the edge of known space. A human freighter, the Kestrel Dawn, had been boarded by Cathari privateers raiders tolerated by the Concordance as controlled chaos. When the humans fought back and destroyed 2 Cathari vessels in self-defense, the Concordance called it disproportionate aggression. The Lords called it proof of inherent volatility. And so, Earth was banished. Inside the vial, a shimmering, invisible shell that bent space itself. Humanity was now alone. Not just isolated, cut off. Like a sick animal left to die in the woods. Panic erupted first. Stock markets collapsed. Food riots broke out in megacities. Religious cults declared the end times. Some governments tried to maintain order. Others crumbled overnight. People screamed at the sky, begging the stars to answer. But the stars said nothing. Yet, beneath the fear, something else stirred. In Geneva, Dr. Myra Chun, a xenolinguist who had once negotiated trade terms with the insectoid czar, locked herself in a bunker with 20 of the world's sharpest minds. In Luna's underground shipyards, General Rajan Kohli ordered the scrapping of luxury yachts to build water recyclers. In the ruins of New Delhi, a teenager named Tariq used a broken comms dish to detect faint energy pulses from the veil's edge. Proof it was artificial, not divine. And then came the broadcast. Not from aliens. From each other. Earth isn't dead, said a voice from Titan's methane farms. We just stopped waiting for permission to live. Mars Colony 3 here, crackled another. We've got oxygen, ice, and anger. That's enough. One by one, scattered human outposts stopped mourning. They started planning. Out of chaos, a new will formed. It had no flag. No president. No anthem. Just a shared understanding. If the galaxy doesn't want us, fine. But we won't disappear quietly. They called it Project Exodus Reclaimed, not because they planned to flee, but because they refused to be erased. Every scientist, engineer, pilot, farmer, and child became part of it. Cities were dismantled not for war, but for survival. Skyscrapers became raw material for atmospheric processors. Old satellites were melted down for microchips. Libraries were digitized and stored in hardened cores, buried deep in the Antarctic ice. The goal wasn't to break the veil yet. It was to endure long enough to understand it. Inside the Sol system, time moved differently. Without galactic trade, humans had to make everything themselves. No more alien alloys. No biogel from Proxima. No zero-point energy cells from the Ander Syndicate. They went back to basics and then pushed past them. In orbital labs, Geneticists spliced algae with Martian lichen to create food that grew in vacuum. AI specialists trained neural nets using only pre-veil data, creating systems that learn faster by simulating decades of trial and error in hours. Children grew up learning orbital mechanics before multiplication tables. The galaxy watched, if they watched at all, with pity. Poor humans, the elegant Vellon said in their liquid-toned broadcasts. So clever, yet so fragile. The warlike Krog grunted, good riddance. They fought like cornered rats. Even sympathetic species, like the gentle moth-like Lumen, whispered, perhaps isolation will calm them. But humanity wasn't calming down. They were sharpening. 10 years after the veil fell, Earth's surface had changed. Forests regrew where cities once stood. Oceans cleared as plastic-eating microbes did their work. But in hidden valleys and deep craters, new structures rose, facilities humming with contained fusion quantum forges, and gene layers spinning new forms of life from old DNA. And in every one of them, the same phrase was etched into the walls, written not in triumph, but in warning. They called us unstable. Let them see what true instability looks like. Meanwhile, the veil held firm. Ships that tried to breach it vanished, some torn apart by tidal forces, others simply gone. But the humans didn't stop trying. Not with force. With patience. With math. With memory. Dr. Chun's team discovered something strange. The veil wasn't a solid barrier. It was a filter. It allowed light and gravity through, but blocked matter and information that carried sentient intent. That meant passive probes could slip through briefly before being unraveled by quantum dissonance. So they sent out ghosts. Tiny gumdrones painted with human memories, recordings of laughter. Beethoven symphonies, footage of ocean waves launched toward the veil's edge. Most failed, but a few, for a few seconds, transmitted back distorted signals. And in those signals, humanity heard something, the faint echo of a galaxy still turning, still living. Without them, that echo became their compass. By year 20, the human race had done something the Concordants never expected. They stopped caring about being let back in. They weren't trying to rejoin the Galactic Club. They were building something new, something theirs alone. Governments merged into the United Terran Initiative, UTI, not as rulers, but as coordinators. Resources were shared. Knowledge was open. Failure was forgiven as long as you tried again. The only crime was giving up. Old enemies became allies. The Martian Free States and the Jovian Collective, once at war over water rights, now shared fusion blueprints. Earth's nations pooled their last satellites to create a solar warning net for cosmic storms. Even corporations, those relics of the old world, were repurposed. Tech giants now designed terraforming drones. Arms manufacturers built asteroid tugs. And through it all, the children grew up different. They didn't dream of alien cities or galactic fame. They dreamed of fixing the broken comms array on Europa, of growing the first apple tree on Ceres, of one day building a ship that could look the veil in the eye and blink first. The galaxy assumed humanity would wither. That without alien tech, without galactic markets, without the comfort of knowing they belonged, humans would tear each other apart or fade into silence. They were wrong. Isolation didn't break humanity. It distilled them like steel forged in fire. Every weakness burned away. Every distraction stripped off. What remained was hard, focused, and fiercely alive. And far away, beyond the veil, the Lords watched. Not with concern. Not yet, but with the faintest stir of curiosity. For the first time in 10,000 years, something unexpected had happened, and in the halls of the Galactic Concordance, where decisions were made with cold logic and ancient precedent, a single question began to whisper through the corridors. What if we made a mistake? But it was too late to ask. Because inside the veil, Humanity had already stopped waiting for answers. They were building their own. Time passed. Not in years, but in scars. A century had crawled by since the veil fell over Sol. Outside, the galaxy moved on, trade routes expanded. New species joined the concordance. Old wars cooled into treaties. Inside, humanity did not fade. They changed. The cities of Earth were quieter now. Many had been taken apart, not in chaos, but in purpose. Steel beams became hull plating. Glass towers were melted into solar lenses. Concrete roads were ground into filler for lunar habitats. Nature crept back, forests swallowed suburbs, rivers cut new paths through empty plazas. But humans did not vanish. They simply moved deeper, higher, farther. They lived in domes on Mars, tunnels on Ceres, floating farms in Venus's upper clouds. Every human settlement, no matter how small, followed one rule. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is wasted on fear. Children born after the banishment knew no other world. They never saw an alien, never heard a galactic newsfeed, never tasted real chocolate, only lab-grown approximations. Yet they smiled. They played. They learned. And when they grew, they worked not for credits or fame, but for survival. And for something deeper. The stubborn belief that being human meant more than just staying alive. The United Terran Initiative UTI was not a government in the old sense. It had no elections, no parties. Leaders rose by merit, not votes. If you could fix a fusion core with scrap parts, you led the engineering course. If you could grow wheat in zero-G with half the light, you managed food production. Failure meant reassignment, not shame. Success meant more responsibility, not riches. And always, the work continued. Without alien alloys, humans learned to weave carbon lattice stronger than titanium. Without FTL drives, they built generation ships powered by slow, steady fusion chips meant not to flee, but to endure. Without medicine from the Ander, they edited their own genes to resist radiation, disease, even aging to a degree. They didn't become immortal, they simply refused to die before their work was done. Their greatest weapon was not a bomb or a beam. It was time. And they used it better than anyone. In orbit around Neptune, the quantum loop array spun endlessly, testing the veil structure. Each pulse sent a silent question into the barrier. What are you made of? Each failure taught them something new. They learned the veil responded to intent, to will. So they began to strip will from their probes, sending out machines with no memory, no goal, just raw data collection. And sometimes, for a few seconds, those machines saw beyond. What they saw terrified and inspired them. Out there, the galaxy was beautiful and soft. Species followed rules, obeyed laws, never questioned the lords, never pushed too hard, too fast, too far. Stability was prized above all. Risk was a sin. And humanity? Humanity had been cast out for being too loud, too fast, too alive. So they got quieter, smarter, deadlier. Soldiers no longer trained with guns alone. They trained in vacuum suits for weeks, learning to fight with nothing but their hands and their minds. Pilots flew simulators that mimicked ship failures so extreme. Half went mad, but the others came out sharper, faster, unbreakable. Scientists ran experiments that would have been banned before the banishment, merging human neural tissue with the eye cores, creating pilots who were their ships for a time. They did not call it madness. They called it necessity. And in the dark, something else grew. Not just technology. Culture. Music filled the habitats, not sad songs of loss, but hard rhythmic beats that matched engine pulses. Art covered bulkheads, murals of Earth's oceans, constellations as seen from old human myths, portraits of first generation who survived the silence. Stories were told not of heroes who won glory, but of those who kept the lights on during blackouts, who shared their last oxygen, who stayed calm when systems failed. This was humanity now. Not loud, but deep. Not reckless, but relentless. Across the veil, rumors began to spread. A crop patrol near the Sol border reported strange signals too regular to be natural, too quiet to be a threat. A Lumen trader claimed her ship's AI dreamed of human faces for 3 nights straight. A Velen historian found old human data chips in a derelict freighter and, after playing them, sat in silence for a week. Then came the incident at scout ship Whisper-7. It was a small concordance vessel, sent to monitor the Veil stability. Standard mission. Routine. But it never returned. When a recovery team found it months later, drifting near Pluto's orbit, the ship was intact, but the crew was gone. Not dead, not taken. Just empty. Helmets off. Logbooks open. One crew member had written on the wall in shaky hand, "They're not screaming." That's the worst part. The concordance dismissed it as psychological breakdown from long isolation. But whispers grew. What are they doing in there? Are they still even human? What if they're waiting? The Lords said nothing. They never did. But their enforcers, the watchful eyes, silent drones that patrolled Veil borders, began doubling their scans. They saw nothing unusual. Just a quiet system. Faint energy signatures. Recycling loops. Routine maintenance. What they did not see were the labs buried under Europa's ice, where human scientists grew synthetic muscles that could tear through alien armor. Or the orbital forges near Mercury, shaping asteroids into silent, black ships with no lights, no emissions, no names. What they did not understand was that humanity had stopped trying to be like the galaxy. They had decided to become something the galaxy had never known. And the first true test came not from outside, but from within. A young engineer named Lean, born on Ganymede, proposed an idea so radical, most thought her mad. "What if," she said, "we don't break the veil? What if we learn its language?" She meant math, not words. The veil was built on quantum entanglement, folded space-time, and harmonic resonance. It wasn't a wall, it was a song. And if you could hum the right note, maybe, just maybe, you could open a door. For 20 years, Lean and her team worked in secret. They used the sun's magnetic field as a tuning fork. They turned Jupiter's storms into signal amplifiers. They taught AI to compose equations like symphonies. And then, one quiet day in Sol year 98, they sent out a pulse, not a probe, not a weapon, just a single tone. Shaped like a human heartbeat. For 3 seconds, the veil rippled. Not enough to escape. Not enough to be seen. But enough to prove one thing. The lot could be picked. News of the ripple spread through the UTI like fire. Not with celebration, but with grim focus. Now they knew. Escape was possible. But they would not rush. They would not beg. They would not attack. They would prepare. And so began the age of forged silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because every word now had weight. Ships were redesigned for stealth, not speed. Soldiers trained in patience, not rage. Children learned not just how to build, but how to hide what they built. The galaxy saw only stillness. But inside the veil, a storm was gathering. Not of fire or fury. A focus. Of will. Of a species that had been told it was too dangerous to exist and decided to prove them right. Not by destroying others, but by becoming unstoppable in the dark and far away. In the gleaming halls of the Galactic Concordance, a junior analyst named Kale Half-Velen, half-human descendant from pre-banishment colonies, watched the latest Veil report and felt a chill. He whispered to no one, "They're not gone. They're becoming." He didn't know it yet, but he would be the first outsider to hear humanity's new voice. When it finally spoke, and it would not be a screen dot, it would be a promise. The veil did not fall with a bang. It blinked. On Sol Year 102, Day 17, at 4:33 Terran Standard Time, the sun rose over Earth as it always had. But something was different. The sky shimmered not with clouds, but with a silent tear in reality itself. A hole, no bigger than a grain of sand, opened near the orbit of Saturn. Then another near Mars. Then a dozen more across the system. Inside every human habitat, alarms stayed silent. No one panicked. This was not an accident. It was the plan. For years, they had tested, refined, waited. Now, the time had come. From hidden shipyards buried in the asteroid belt, black-hulled vessels emerged long, smooth, and utterly dark. No lights, no engine flares. They moved like shadows given purpose. These were the Odyssey-class phasing ships built not to fly through space, but to step between its folds. At the heart of the fleet floated the Aurora's Will, a command vessel forged from the melted-down monuments of old Earth. On its bridge stood Admiral Elara Voss. She was tall, lean, and calm. Her eyes held the weight of 100 years of silence. She had never seen an alien, never heard a galactic voice, but she knew their names, their laws, their lies. She gave one order: begin the reclaim. The first target was Kairos Moon, a dead rock on the far edge of the Concordance, where one of the Veil's anchors hummed. The anchor was not a weapon. It was a lock, a cosmic bolt holding humanity inside. And the humans were done being locked away. The fleet arrived not with fire, but with silence. No hails, no warnings. Just presence. Concordant sentries detected them too late. Their sensors screamed ships, appearing from nowhere, moving without thrust, radiating no heat. Panic spread through Caro's outpost. Alarms blared. Troops scrambled, but the humans did not attack the outpost. They ignored it completely. Instead, they surrounded the anchor, a tower of glowing crystal taller than a mountain, humming with power older than stars. From the Aurora's Will, thousands of tiny drones poured out like silver mist. They carried no weapons, only tools. Molecular disassemblers, quantum tuners, memory wipers. The Concordance forces fired. Beams lanced out, striking the human ships. But the beams passed through partially. The ships existed slightly out of phase, like ghosts brushing against reality. They took damage, yes, but not enough to stop. Within minutes, the drones reached the anchor. And then it began to die, not explode. Not shatter. UMMAKE. The crystal dimmed. Threads of light pulled inward, collapsing into nothing. The hum faded to silence. The anchor did not break. It simply forgot it ever existed. As it vanished, a single message pulsed out from the human fleet. It was broadcast on every open channel, in every known language, even those long dead. We were told to be quiet. We listened. Now we speak. Then they were gone, back through the Veil's tear, which closed behind them like a healed wound. The galaxy reeled. Cairo's outpost reported the event, but no one believed them at first. Anchors were eternal, built by the Lords, untouchable. Yet the data was clear. The Kairos anchor was gone. And the veil around Sol weakened. More holes appeared. Human ships began appearing near other anchors on desolate moons, frozen comets, dead worlds at the edges of known space. Each time, they struck fast, silent, precise. They never fired on living beings unless fired upon. When they did, their return was swift, surgical, and terrifyingly efficient. They freed human-descended colonies. The Concordance had forgotten tiny outposts where Earth's children had been sold into labor or used for experiments. They left food, medicine, and ships. They took nothing but data and vengeance were needed. At the mining world of Helios 9, they found a camp where human workers were forced to breathe toxic air without masks. The overseers, a reptilian species called the Skarn, laughed when the humans arrived. "You are ghosts," they hissed. "You have no right here." By dawn, the Skarn were gone. The camp stood empty, except for freed workers and a single human medic treating the sick. On the gate, painted in red, "Rights are taken, not given." The Concordance Council met in emergency session. "This is not war," argued Elder Velm Representative Mirathus. "This is correction." "Correction?" shouted the Krog warlord Gruul. "They dismantled a Lord-made anchor like it was scrap metal." "They are reclaiming what was stolen," whispered Kale, the half-human analyst. No one listened. The Lords remained silent, but their silence was no longer calm. It was watchful. The human fleet did not grow larger. It grew smarter. Ships learned from each battle. AI cores updated in real time. Pilots shared neural maps after every mission, so the next crew knew every trick, every weakness, every breath of their enemies. They did not seek to conquer, only to remove chains. And with each anchor they destroyed. The veil thinned. On Sol Year 103, the humans made their boldest move yet. They returned to where it all began, Vexus Prime. The trade hub still stood, glittering and proud. Aliens of 100 species walked its streets, unaware that the unstable humans were now watching from orbit. The humans sent no warships. Only one small vessel, the Kestrel Dawn II, built to honor the freighter that started it all. It docked peacefully. 2 humans stepped out, Admiral Voss and a young engineer named Lean. They carried no weapons, only data slates. They walked to the central tribunal, where the original judgment against humanity had been logged. They uploaded a file, centuries of human logs, medical records, cultural archives, and a full reconstruction of the Vexus incident, showing the Cathari raid, the distress calls ignored, the human self-defense. Then Voss spoke, not through translators, but in perfect galactic standard, a language she had learned from old recordings. "We did not come to fight. We came to remind you, justice requires truth, not fear." Before security could react, they were back aboard their ship. And as they lifted off, every screen in Vexus Prime flashed the same image, a child on Mars, planting a seed in red soil, smiling. The message was clear. This is who we are. Not your monsters. Your makers. Panic turned to doubt across the galaxy. Riots broke out on human-descended worlds. Workers refused to labor for Concordance masters. Artists began painting human faces. Scholars demanded the banishment records be reopened. The council was losing control. Worse, the anchors were falling faster now. The humans had cracked the code. They could predict where new anchors would form. They were not just removing locks. They were preventing new ones from being built. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Will, watching a star map flicker with dying anchors. Her face was tired, but her eyes burned. "We're not just breaking out," she said to Lean. "We're breaking the idea that anyone should be locked away for being different." Lean nodded. "They thought silence would kill us." Voss smiled faintly. "It only taught us how to listen." Far away, on a hidden moon, the last anchor in human-controlled space pulsed weakly. The fleet gathered. The drones swarmed. And as the crystal faded into dust, a new sound filled the void, not a weapon, not a threat, but a song, an old Earth lullaby. Played on a synthesizer built from asteroid metal. It drifted through space. Soft and steady. And for the first time in over a century, humanity did not hide. They sang. The Lords had never lost. Not in 10,000 years. Not to war, plague, or rebellion. Their rule was not built on force alone, but on certainty, the deep, unshakable belief that chaos could be tamed, that all life would choose order if given the choice. Then came humanity. At first, the Lords did nothing. Let them play. Let them knock down a few anchors. They were still inside the veil, mostly. Still contained. Still predictable. But when the humans walked onto Vexus Prime and spoke truth like a weapon, something shifted. Not in the stars, but in the minds of the galaxy. Whispers became questions. Questions became protests. Protests became movements. The lords could crush armies. They could erase worlds. But they could not unhear a lullaby, so they acted. From the heart of the core nebula, where time bent and light slept, the celestial wardens awoke. They were not ships. Not beings. Not even alive in any way humans understood. They were ideas given form, ancient, towering shapes of living geometry that warped space around them. Each warden could pacify a rebellious system in days. One had once silenced a star-eating hive mind by rewriting its dreams. Another had calmed a civil war across 12 planets by making both sides forget they were fighting. They were the Lord's final answer to disorder. 3 wardens were sent to intercept a human fleet near the Clear Alias Rift, a jagged tear in space where stars died. Young the Concordance expected a swift end. The humans would burn, scatter, or beg. It had always been so. They were wrong. The human fleet did not flee. It formed a ring tight, silent, waiting. When the first warden arrived, it did not fire. It spoke, not with sound, but with pressure against the mind. A feeling of calm, of surrender, of rightness. It offered peace through obedience. Most species would have dropped their weapons and wept with relief. The humans blinked, then they attacked. Not with guns, but with questions. Tiny probes, no larger than grains of sand, shot toward the warden. They carried no explosives, only sensors, recorders, and strange pulses of modulated human brainwaves recorded from meditating monks, grieving mothers, laughing children. The warden recoiled, not in pain. In confusion, its core, logic stuttered. It had never encountered minds that held joy and rage in the same breath, that chose pain to protect others, that valued freedom over safety. While the warden hesitated, human ships moved in not to destroy, but to study. They scanned its structure, traced its energy flows, recorded its reactions. And when one human pilot, Lieutenant Jax Renner, got too close and his ship was torn apart by the warden's field, his last act was not to scream, but to broadcast his ship's final data burst. That data became the key, back on the Aurora's will. Scientists worked through the night. They found patterns in the warden's designed biological architecture, woven with cosmic code. It wasn't built. It was grown. And like all life, it could be understood. Within a week, they built the first Echo. It was not a weapon. Not really. It was a mirror, shaped like a warden, but woven with human DNA, neural maps, and fragments of Earth's oldest songs. The Echo was sent to meet the second warden near the ruins of Kairos. The 2 giants faced each other in the void. The warden pulsed with order. The Echo pulsed with memory. And then, the unthinkable happened. The warden began to change. Its smooth surfaces rippled. Its light dimmed. It did not fight. It unraveled not into death, but into stillness. Like a machine that had finally heard a truth it could not deny. The Echo did not destroy it. It quieted it, reduced it to inert matter, not through force, but through resonance. The warden simply forgot how to be a weapon. The third warden never engaged. It turned and fled back toward the core. For the first time, the Lord's perfect order had a crack, and humanity poured hope through it. But they did not stop there. Admiral Voss gave a new order. Share everything. Not secrets. Not weapons. Knowledge. Every human archive. Every cure. Every engine design. Every math proof. Every poem was uploaded to the galactic data streams. They didn't encrypt it. didn't sell it. They just released it freely to anyone who asked. A lone child on a farming moon downloaded blueprints for clean water filters and built one from scrap. A Krog rebel used human tactics to outmaneuver Concordance patrols. A Lumin artist painted a mural of Earth's oceans using human color theory, and for the first time, her people felt the concept of blue. The galaxy was waking up, and the council was losing control. Riots turned into revolutions. Planets declared independence. Old enemies formed alliances. The Lord's rule had always depended on fear and dependence. Now, species saw another way, not through conquest, but through creation. The Lords tried to silence the broadcasts. They jammed signals, erased data nodes. But human information had already spread like seeds on the wind. You couldn't unlearn how to purify water. You couldn't forget a song that made you cry. Worse, the humans began contacting the oppressed quietly, carefully. Not as saviors, but as teachers. On the mining world of 07, enslaved workers received tiny earpieces that whispered instructions. Cut the power line at shift change. Hide in Sector 4. A ship will come. No names. No demands. Just help. On the academic world of all, students found hidden files showing how the Concordance rewrote history to make themselves look wise. They printed them, shared them, burned the old textbooks. The Lords, for the first time, were afraid, not of human weapons, those they could break. They were afraid of human ideas, because ideas did not die when shot. They grew when shared dot and humanity had spent a century alone, not just surviving, but thinking, dreaming, remembering what it meant to be free. Now, they were giving that memory to the galaxy. Even the Concordance began to fracture. Some members demanded the banishment be reversed. Others called for total war. Elder Marathas stood before the council and said, "We did not exile monsters. We exiled mirrors, and now we cannot bear to look." Kale, the half-human analyst, was no longer ignored. He stood before the full council and played a recording, a human grandmother, singing to her grandchild on a rooftop in old Tokyo, Earth. The voice was soft. The words were simple. But the room fell silent. One Velm elder wept. The Lords finally spoke, not through messengers, but directly. Their voice filled every mind in the core worlds. Cease this madness. Return to your cage, or be unmade. The humans did not reply with words. They sent a ship, not a warship. A school ship dot. It drifted into neutral space near the core nebula. On its hull, written in 100 languages, "Come learn." Inside were classrooms, labs, gardens, and humans teachers. Not soldiers, waiting to show anyone how to build a better world. Not take one. The galaxy watched. Some called it a trick. Most called it hope dot and deep in the heart spire. Where the Lords sat in their thrones of frozen time, doubt took root. For 10,000 years, they had kept the galaxy calm. But calm was not peace dot, and now, from the edge of nothing, a single species had shown them the difference. The wardens stayed hidden. The anchors stopped forming. The veil thinned to near nothing. Humanity did not celebrate. They waited dot because they knew the final choice was not theirs to make dot. It belonged to the Lords. And for the first time in their endless lives, the Lords did not know what to do. The Heart Spire stood at the center of the galaxy, where space folded into itself and time moved like slow breath. It was not made of stone or metal, but of something older thought given shape, silence made solid. No ship could reach it by normal means. Only those the Lords allowed could pass through the rings of light that guarded it. Yet there it was, a human ship, dark and quiet. Floating just beyond the final ring dot, it carried one person. Admiral Alara Voss stepped onto the obsidian platform alone. No armor, no weapon, Just a simple black suit and a small case in her hand. Her boots made no sound. The air held no scent. Even her breath seemed to vanish into the stillness. Before her, the lords appeared, not as beings, but as presence. 3 forms of shifting, light tall, endless, humming with the weight of ages. Their voices came not through air, but through the bones of the universe itself. You were banished for chaos, they said, not in anger, but in sorrow. Yet you bring more. Voss did not bow. She did not shout. She simply stood. You called us unstable, she said, her voice calm, clear, human. But chaos is not our flaw. It is how we grow. A seed must break its shell to become a tree. A mind must question to become wise. The lords did not move. You have broken our anchors, unmade our wardens, poisoned the minds of obedient species with dreams. We gave them truth, Voss said, not poison. You locked us away because we fought back when attacked. But you never asked why we fight. She opened the case. Inside was not a bomb, not a weapon, but a single data crystal. This is Earth, she said. Not just war, not just rage, everything. A child's first steps, a farmer's last harvest, a mother's lullaby, a scientist's midnight discovery, a soldier's letter home. We are messy, yes, loud, yes, but we are also kind, and brave, and stubbornly hopeful. She placed the crystal on the platform. You judged us by our worst moment. We ask only that you see our whole story. Silence followed. Not empty silence, but heavy like the pause between heartbeats. Then, one of the lords spoke, softer now. What do you want, human? Voss smiled faintly. Not to rule, not to replace you. We came to offer a choice. She turned and pointed not with her hand, but with her will toward the galaxy beyond the spire. Out there, 1,000 worlds watched. Ships hung in space, not to fight, but to witness. Species who had never questioned authority now waited to see what freedom looked like when it stood face to face with power. We don't want your throne, Voss said. We want your surrender. The lords rippled. Surrender? Yes, she said. Dissolve the concordance. End the veil. Let every world choose its own path. No more lords, no more orders from the dark. The other lords stirred. Chaos will follow. Wars. Suffering. Maybe, Voss said. But it will be their chaos. Their choice. Not your cage. She took a step closer. You said we were too dangerous to exist freely. But look what your peace has done. Fear. Silence. Stagnation. You didn't protect the galaxy. You put it to sleep. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the Central Lord spoke, its voice almost human. And if we refuse? Voss did not flinch. Then we leave. And we take the galaxy with us. She did not mean war. She meant something worse, irrelevance. Already, species were sharing human knowledge, building their own ships, writing their own laws. The concordance was crumbling not from attack, but from obsolescence. The lords could burn every human ship, but they could not burn the idea of freedom, and the galaxy had tasted it. Finally, the lords dimmed. Not in defeat, but in understanding. What do you ask? Has never been done. I know, Voss said. That's why it matters. One by one, the lords folded their light. The heart spire trembled, not with destruction, but with release. A single command pulsed out across the galaxy. The veil is lifted. The concordance is ended. All species are free. It was not spoken with pride, but with peace. Voss turned and walked back to her ship. She did not look back. Behind her, the spire began to fade, not vanish, but change. Its walls softened. Light bloomed where only shadow had been. Outside, alien ships drifted closer not to conquer, but to learn that the humans did not celebrate with fireworks or victory songs. They simply opened their doors. On every human ship, labs, farms, and classrooms welcomed visitors. A Veln elder touched a hydroponic tomato and cried. A young Krog boy sat with a human engineer, learning how to fix a broken engine with tape and wire. A Lumin mother held her child as a human medic taught her how to treat fever with herbs grown in 0-G. No one gave orders. No one demanded payment. They just shared. Admiral Voss returned to the Aurora's will. On the bridge, Lean handed her a message. It was from Earth. Not a report. Not an update. Just a photo. A field of wheat swaying under a real sun, planted by hands that had never known war. Voss touched the screen softly. We did it, she whispered. No, Lean said. We just remembered how to be human. Across the galaxy, something new began. Not an empire. Not a union. But a network of teachers, builders, dreamers. Humans didn't lead it. They joined it. They listened as much as they spoke. They learned alien songs and taught Earth stars in return. The lords were never seen again. Some said they vanished. Others said they became something else, quiet watchers in the dark, finally letting the galaxy breathe. And the Concordance? It did not collapse into war, as feared. It bloomed into 1,000 new societies, some wise, some foolish, all free. Years later, a child on a distant world asked an old human teacher, "Why did you fight the lords?" The teacher smiled. We didn't fight them. We reminded them that even the smallest voice matters. The child thought about that, then asked, "Are humans special?" The teacher looked up at the stars. No, but we never forgot that everyone else is too. And in that moment, the galaxy was not ruled. It was alive, not perfect, not peaceful all the time, but real. And that was enough. For the first time in 10,000 years, the stars did not shine in order. They shone in hope. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of Seoul, a new ship launched, not to conquer, not to flee, but to explore. Its name was Tomorrow. And it carried no weapons. Only seeds,